Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Orion.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, these are wellness talks.
Awesome.
I just like to give these talks to kind of probe the wellness community and see what people are up to, see what their passions are, see what they're getting into.
Nice.
And see how I can share that to the world and gravitate people to this wellness community here in Nosara and abroad.
Awesome.
So give me a little intro. Tell me your name. Tell me kind of like who you are and
That's a big question, Orion. That's a big question.
Yeah, it's okay. It can be as small or as big of an answer as you choose.
Yeah.
So.
My name's Patrick Cooke, originally from Toronto. Been here in Nosara about 12 years. Had traveled the world and visited a lot of places and never felt an urge to move from Toronto, my hometown. Came here for a week, extended it to 2 weeks, and I just had like a soul calling that I had to be here. So this place is just so magical as far as connection with nature, the vibrant community, just an opportunity for growth. I think on a personal level and a community level, it's something I haven't found anywhere else. So really super grateful that I found this place and these people. But in general, I'm an artist. I make music. I'm a music producer, songwriter, also coach, podcaster, a bunch of other stuff as well. Surfer, father, yeah. Lover, partner.
Yeah, all the important jobs.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So how long have you been producing music for?
I mean, music's been part of my life since I was very young. My parents always had music around at the house. Got my first guitar when I was about 13. Started a band with my older brother, which was hugely successful at the time. I mean, to the extent we were playing 300 to 500 person venues when I was a teenager. Yeah, it was amazing.
Killer.
Yeah, super fun. Learned a lot about live performance and just the connection, the way music moves people. I was really drawn to because it really moved me. And then to be able to facilitate that, to hold space for other people to enter and feel that energy, and for you to be sort of facilitating what's coming out of the speakers, like, wow, this is profound, you know?
Yeah.
And then so played in bands for a number of years and got into producing and recording like early 2000s when I was getting out of college. It's kind of dating me, but that's okay. I was working in Toronto film sets and like on set being like a props guy or a production assistant or whatever they would hire me to do. But I'm working on these commercials, these TV shows, these films, and I'm like, who's making the music for these? Somebody's got to be making the music, right? And so me and a friend were like, okay, well, let's figure it out. And so we started a company that was doing post-production sound, and it was like steep learning curve. This is right when, the first Pro Tools rigs were coming on the market that consumers could afford,
Right.
rather than
Good timing, though.
Great timing. I mean, fortuitous timing. In the history of technology, I landed at the perfect time, so super grateful for that. But it took me years and years and years sitting in a basement trying to figure out the technology and all the fun that goes along with that. Sure. But figured it out and managed to have a successful career producing music, mostly for film and television, for 20 years now.
Right on.
Yeah. We mentioned before we got on camera that I sort of took a break. I came here and the business was changing, but also I was changing at the same time,
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm kind of whoring my talent to corporations right now, and that doesn't really align with the person I'm becoming or want to become,
Right.
So I'm like, what am I doing here? Like using the power of music to influence people to buy shit, basically, which, I mean, pays the bills, great, and you got to do what you got to do, but I needed a break from it. I needed a reset with my relationship to it. So I kind of took a break. I took a step back, and that's when I went into more personal development, and that led to coaching, and then led to an alcohol program, which was hugely successful. It wasn't like Alcoholics Anonymous. It was more about let's reset our relationship with alcohol, because it's so predominant in Western society.
Sure.
I'm Irish. Everything you do revolves around drinking, So there was an opportunity there to sort of, and I quit drinking for several years at that point, and so I was like, felt I could hold space for other people just to reset their relationship, right? It's not about abstinence. It's not about, and most of the people I dealt with were not like alcoholics. They were just people,
sure,
like you and I or whoever, just like you just drink because it's habitual,
It's
and
easy.
It's easy. Yeah. Everybody's doing it, and so That was an opportunity. And so I did some coaching programs around that. Amazing. But at the same time, the draw of music was always in me. You know, I was still making music and DJing and stuff and having fun, but it wasn't a career.
Right.
So there was this power around music that I felt I needed to harness, you know, especially coming from wellness. Like, a lot of us are into transformation or helping people or holding space for people. Sure. And the more we can scale that, the more, you know, we can reach more people and facilitate awakening and, you know, all the things we're trying to do as sort of wellness people, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And music is such a powerful tool in that space because it can reach masses at scale, and it's got that essence that really everybody can relate to music. Everybody is moved by music, right? And so it's been interesting sort of reapproaching my music career with that new mindset. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you spoke about alcoholism, and like what I look at in the world is a lot of times people aren't very disciplined.
Yeah.
And I'll speak for myself in this way. When I choose to grab a drink, it's because I'm bored and I almost don't even like have this incline of like something to do. So it's like, oh, well, this is easy. And I go out to the bar and just chit chat, and then the next day will come and blah, blah, blah. So it gets people really in that lemmings sort of mindset of just like you said, it's just so easy, and it's so just social lubricant. But so let's talk about that a little bit and your wellness. It seems like you're always driven by music in a direction. And it seems like now you've found more of like an actual life purpose behind this. And before it seems like you're dabbling in it, but now it seems like you're really like harnessing this this focus around wellness and music. And so how did navigating the bar scene, how was that when you were trying to develop this inner discipline?
It was incredibly difficult. And I mean, I struggled with it even for several years before I quit drinking. There was this identity I realized I was tied up with, party Patty, basically. Because I'm super fun. I'm a great guy to party with. I don't get angry. I don't get violent. I'm just like, everybody have a good time, and it's like, it's awesome, you know. I loved it. And you know, I play guitar, so sitting around the campfire, all that kind of stuff, but it all revolved around drinking, right? So I felt so tied to this identity. It's like, how am I going to escape this? How am I going to relate to people? Do I have to just sort of shut out my entire previous life and start anew? That's scary, you know. I don't really want to do that. But when you make choices that benefit you, inevitably there are going to be people that need to fall away. Relationships, situations, places that don't serve you anymore, right? But living in a small town, there's only a handful of places to go, you know, El Chivo being one of them. It just, I mean, I made a commitment. I'm like, I'm going to do one. I started with 30 days, and then I did 60 days, and then I did 90 days. I'm like, okay, I can do this. It's kind of white knuckling it though, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to just like fight through this. And then after the 90 days, it's so easy to fall back into the old patterns. I found myself 3 months later, it's like, I'm in the exact same spot. Okay, so how can I do this? I'm going to take an entire year. I'm going to commit to the year and just do it. But what I realized, and this is how I sort of worked with my clients, it's not, willpower is like a muscle. It will exhaust itself. You can't hold on and white knuckle forever. So you have to get to the root of why you're drinking, why you're trying to escape, why you don't feel comfortable, you know, and just sit with those things. This is the power of meditation and all the practices that we do. It's your relationship to reality, your relationship to yourself. That's what wellness is to me. It's a relationship to reality, right? So all the things we do regarding that, be it meditation, plant medicine, yoga, whatever, cacao ceremony, that's all to create or cultivate a presence, a relationship reality that is real and truthful and honest, and it's not escaping any part of the spectrum. Because human beings, we want to escape pain and move towards pleasure. Simple, right? And most of us are just orient towards the pleasure thing and just like, that's ugly or uncomfortable or painful, I'm not going to deal with it, so let's put it over there. But that never works. You can't be a complete whole person unless you recognize the entire spectrum. Right? So sitting with those feelings was the most difficult part, you know? And then going out and seeing all my friends having a good time, I'm like, no, I'll have a soda water. That was really challenging, but you wake up the next morning and you feel fucking fucking awesome, you know,
yeah.
and they're all hungover and
True, yeah.
all their anxiety or everything they were feeling that they were trying to escape is still there, probably amplified because they're hungover, you know, and so I had to relearn. I had to relearn how to dance sober, you know, because before I'm a great dancer, I love dancing, but 3 or 4 drinks just to loosen me up, you know, that was the sort of thing. But then dancing without it, it's like, okay, this is different. It's beautiful, you know?
Yeah. But frightening.
Frightening, terrifying, because you're exposed. You feel exposed, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
the alcohol's sort of like, oh, I'm okay, I'm confident, you know? But if you do that enough times, you can nurture that sort of sense of wholeness and sense of completeness within you where you don't need anything outside of you, you know? You don't need to escape with alcohol. And when the negative feelings or the anxiety or the discomfort comes up, you can just be with it and be present with it.
Sure.
And that's what I mean about the relationship to reality. It's like, this is part of my experience right now. Do I need to escape it, or can I sit with it and just learn from it?
Right.
And that's super powerful, right? Because if the anxiety comes up and it keeps coming up and you keep ignoring it, you're missing an opportunity to learn something, right? That's what these emotions are for. It's like, what is this trying to teach me? What is it trying to tell me about either the external circumstance or anything that's coming up within me that I'm missing that wisdom because I'm scared of it, or it's uncomfortable, or it's painful, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it taught me being sober. It's like,
Yeah.
which is powerful.
And you probably need about a year to really integrate all that and say like, oh, well, why can't I do this sober? Or you know, like not why can't I, but why do I have an apprehension, or why do I have a reservation of doing this sober? I should be able to do anything sober. I shouldn't need something in order to get me to that place.
Totally.
So I think it's a problem of, once again, speaking for myself, knowing what it's like at the end of that journey, like at the end of the year, and how good it's going to feel. Talk about a little bit about like the benefits, short-term and long-term, of stopping that lifestyle.
Well, I mean, there's so many, it's ridiculous. Like just from a health perspective, like never felt so clear and so grounded and just so present, you know? It's still difficult though, because all those emotions don't go away. It's just you're better equipped to deal with them, right? So, you know, and then monetarily, I'm not spending all that money out at the bars. You know, there's just it's like a snowball of effects. Like if you're feeling better in the morning, you can get more done, and so productivity and business and creativity and relationships, they all flourish. Everything flourishes. Like in the bedroom, like everything. You know, it's like sex sober is so much better than even a couple of drinks. You just like, you're kind of checked out. You know, you're like, it's like, dude, you can have that deep presence. And a lot of the people I spoke to in my client program, it's like sex was a big one. Totally. They couldn't be intimate without some kind of intoxication.
Some sort of thing.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, you know, but if you can be that present with yourself, that's an opportunity for your partner to be that present, and that connection is divine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, of course. So.
Yeah, so many benefits. I highly recommend it. And I spoke before I got on camera. It's not about abstinence for me. It never was about abstinence. Like, it's your relationship to alcohol that is the most important thing. So now I can go out and have a drink, you know, and I do sometimes. You know?
Yeah, but you took that whole year.
I took 4 years
of getting to know yourself
exactly
immensely, and then moving into that. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's so cool. So you talked a little bit about doing online work with clients, and I've heard also you doing a little bit of men's work around town. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, about what your inspiration and why you even do that with people? Yeah,
I mean, I haven't held a lot of space as a facilitator in men's work. I've been to a lot of circles. But I mean, it's incredibly powerful work. There's a need for men to feel seen and heard that doesn't exist in society typically, right?
Correct, yeah.
Women, okay, they have a more, they're more in touch with their emotions, they're more willing to talk about their emotions. Men are supposed to just be stoic, strong providers, shut the fuck up and get it done, right? All the time, which is ridiculous, right? And frankly, now in this modern world, I think any men who are not in touch with their emotions or able to process them and learn from them are at a distinct disadvantage.
Sure.
Right? Even in the business world, right? Because if you're completely cut off from your emotions, you're missing most of life, and you're missing most of the wisdom that comes from life. And it also allows you to behave like an asshole.
Yeah.
Right? If you're just like, oh, well, this is what I'm supposed to do as a man. It's like power, money, profit. Then you could just go out and do those things irregardless of damage or, who it's affecting. And that's, look at the world we're in right now. It's the toxic, negative, ego-driven, male-dominated society that's created this wars and profit and killing the planet and everything, right? And so why it's so powerful is like what I've learned through personal development is like, okay, yes, I'm upset by that. I'm upset about the environment, but going out and fighting it without doing my own personal work is just going to make it worse, right? So how can I be most effective in the world? Take care of this first, right? And so how can I become more of a powerful male role model for myself, for my partner, for my children, and model a new form of masculinity that can blossom into something that is true and beautiful for everybody, right? Men, women, everybody. So just being in a container where there's a group of men and we all agree before we go in to hold space for each other, that never happens with men, ever, So being in that space and having the floor to be, express yourself and be vulnerable without judgment, that's incredibly powerful. And so to be seen and heard and then have reflection from other men about what they're going through, and it's like, okay, here's where we can hold space for each other. And when we do that, we can go back out into the world feeling more grounded, feeling more powerful, feeling more agency in what we can get done, but recognizing whatever pain and struggle is there, not pushing it away.
Right? Like almost having a lab of safety,
exactly,
where you can practice these things.
And
I think accountability is a big thing.
Accountability also huge. I
had friends when I was younger that did hold me accountable for things, and back then it felt a little bit more like picking on, but it's actually, I think this is, and I've been to a few circles too where this is the big thing that I've got from it, is like a few of these guys were willing to tell me that I was wrong, and that, or that I might be wrong, and maybe here's a different opportunity to see it in a different way, and offering me that kind of reflection, but mostly accountability. I feel for myself is like, oh shit, this person's gonna hold me accountable, so I'm gonna have to actually show up a little bit more. And as a man, I feel like that actually inspires me to also do a little bit better.
Very motivating.
And to show example to other people. Maybe people catch on. Maybe I'm not even right, but at least I have that feeling that's moving through me. That I have purpose. And
beautiful.
Drive.
Beautiful.
So it's. I see a lot of very lost men and women right now due to all of the things that have just changed very quickly in the technologies and everything that is encountered. And the big thing that I see men going through right now is escaping that dogma of like, you're a man, you're supposed to do X, Y, and Z, and more going like, I really like being a protector and I like holding space and all these things, but now like I have more time to lean into like who I am as a person, as a man or a being, and this is creating a lot of chaos in people's lives. Thus, I think the big movement of coaches has really like exploded because I think people are really looking for guidance, like a mentor or I didn't grow up with a father, so I think this is a huge thing also amongst men nowadays. 100%. It's not necessarily growing up with a huge father figure. And realizing in my like 40s, like I didn't have that, and now I'm like, oh shit, like I have to kind of like redefine myself as a man. So this is like personally, this has been a journey for me. Good
for you for going down that road though, dude. I applaud anybody who does. It takes courage to look at yourself like that. Oh,
totally. And so to get back into wellness, I think like the reason why I do all this is because I do like it when people work on themselves. And they don't necessarily go through just the necessary steps. They get challenged. Maybe they fall down. Maybe they can see things from a different light. I think that's why Nosara can be so powerful. When people come here, it just has I don't know what it is. You've lived here for a long time. But this place is a catalyzer for people.
100%.
But what do you feel it is about Nosara?
Well, I mean, just on the surface level, it's a different way of living. I mean, I grew up in a city, so I mean, the pace, the distraction, the constant advertising, you can just easily get caught up in it and ignore anything that's coming up. You're not in tune with yourself, right? Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, those snow globes. It's always shaking up, right? And when you come here, it's not that much to do. You're sort of in touch with nature. The snow globe starts to, you're like, oh shit, this is uncomfortable. I don't like it. So either you lean into that or you take off. Like that's what happens with people. They can't handle it or they stay. And the people that do stay, they find a sort of a deeper sense of themselves. You know, there's the connection with nature that's just incredibly powerful, right? You go out in the ocean, you feel a sense of like oneness, of power, of the majesty of nature that just invites you to reflect, right? And then there's opportunity to reflect in yoga, meditation, plant medicine, all sorts of...
The whole gamut.
The whole gamut here, right? So, and if you really lean into that, it's an opportunity to reset that relationship with yourself, right? And it's like, okay, well, where have I been ignoring things? Where have I just been distracted? Where have I not been honoring myself? Or, you know, where have I been unconsciously drinking, or all the things, right? Yeah. And all those things tend to come to the surface here. That's why a lot of relationships explode, right? Because if you have any cracks in the foundation of your relationship that you've been ignoring, they're going to come to the surface here.
Come right to the surface here.
Which is challenging. Happened to me. Happened to a lot of my, you know. I mean, when I first got here, this is really awful, but when I first got here, the friends that moved here that I came to visit, they're like, Costa Rica is the place where marriages come to die. I'm like, that is the worst thing I've ever heard. That is so awful. That's never going to happen to me. 5 years later, I got divorced. But I mean, which was incredibly painful, but at the same time, a huge, huge learning experience. Right. You know, I didn't know who I was, which is, you know, you just go through life thinking, this is what I'm supposed to do. I go to school, I get a job, I get married, I have kids, I buy a house, buy a car, save for retirement, and then it's over. Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Where am I at?
I got most of the way up that ladder, and then I'm like, am I satisfied? Do I feel whole? Do I feel like a human being, or am I just following the rules? Sure. You know? And so to a certain extent, to a large extent, I didn't know who I was when my marriage was dissolving. And this is what this place does. It's like it causes you to release all the bullshit identity and ego attachment. But that's incredibly painful, and scary, because people would rather hang on to an identity that's comfortable, even though it's painful, just because it's familiar, rather than tear the whole thing down and really get to the essence of who they are at the deepest level, because that's scary as hell, man. Sure. But it is the most rewarding experience you will ever go through. I highly recommend it for everybody.
Oh yeah.
And totally. Nosara is a great place to do that, right? And all the things you're doing with wellness, that's facilitating that process, right?
And retreats. Yeah. I mean, the exact reason there have been these music retreats that have been happening in Nosara, and I think that's the basic premise behind it, is to get people out of their element, bring them to a place like Nosara, and do this sort of reset, and open their minds to just a question. Just start the question, and then see where that leads. And I'm really interested to see, because I'm kind of a dork tech guy, and I really like the way music can alter any situation. We talk about it in movies. It can change the whole scene.
100%.
You talk about it at like a club. It can make or break a dance floor. You talk about it even in a relationship. Let's say you're going to propose to someone and you put on the right music. That could make or break that yes or no. So to me, like, music is, I think, one of the biggest influencers on this planet. The way, I have no idea why, but the way we as humans take in music and the way that we respond to it is just so powerful.
100%.
So how do you feel is like what is the connection between wellness and music?
Yeah, well, this is a great question, because I spoke earlier about how I moved away from music because it felt like I was whoring my talent to corporations, right? Yeah. But then I was kind of sitting on the sidelines, and one of the things I've learned, you know, through my own personal journey is, like, if you really want to affect the world, you got to be in it. You know, you got to play the game to a certain extent. You can't just like retreat and be a hermit. Then, you know, you might be okay by yourself, but you're not making any impact. And I want to make impact. You know, I want to affect people and be part of a positive transformation in consciousness and humanity.
Yeah, buddy.
And music is such a powerful element that, like you said, it moves everybody, it affects everybody. It's like, okay, well, how can I channel music in a way that is powerful and impactful in the ways that I want it to be. And I didn't see that in my previous incarnation doing. And shout out to Adam McInnes and the Billboard 500 Club. When I met Adam, incredibly talented guy, incredibly tuned in guy, but he also, the Billboard 500 Club was a place where he was nurturing this attitude towards music. It was where, let's take the power back from the record companies, from the publishers, from the major movie producers, and develop a community where we're all pulling in the same direction for everybody's success, but with the premise that we want to change the world from the inside out, the industry from the inside out, right? And not sit on the sidelines and just say, oh, they won, but wait a minute, music is ours, it's everybody's. Let's take the power back. And so let's create music. It can be pop songs, it can be rap, it can be hip hop, it can be anything, but with positive intention, with frequency, with lyrics that are conscious, like that inspire and it speaks to the highest angels of human nature rather than the lowest, angels of human nature, which is what most music does now. It's hip hop is about murder and drugs, and pop music about sex and partying, and it's like what are we teaching our kids? It's like when you got Doja Cat and talking about and all these. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
There's a lot out there.
There's a lot out there that is speaking to the lowest angels of human nature, right? And which is when kids hear that, that's what they want to be, and so it just perpetuates that. So let's give them an alternative where the music is still awesome, still as powerful, still as hooky, still as inspiring, but it resonates on a different level. It inspires them to be the best version of themselves, to go out and create and be a positive impact in the world. So that's what we're doing with the community, Billboard 500. It's like all the artists that are in there are tuned in, they're conscious, we're creating music that has intention and frequency and conscious lyrics.
Totally.
Right? And so now we can broadcast that energy and that frequency out into the world through music, through radio, through TV, through films, through advertisements, and still reach people on a level that inspires them, even if they don't know what's happening.
Sure, yeah.
Right? And a lot of the time they don't, but that's okay. That's what really lights me up, right? And so now I can work with these artists who are tuned in and conscious and feel good about the music I'm putting out into the world and really affect people. If I can get my song on an advertisement, it's gonna resonate some different way with them, or a commercial or a TV show or a movie or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
So
yeah, and I think when you talk about the lowest angels and the highest angels of our humanity, it's like, right now, I do believe that the whole world is in a bit of like a low frequency kind of hum. We keep stirring in this way. So I think it's very easy to make music that relates to that because it's what's happening.
Exactly.
And people don't question it and they go along with things. But, if you do change the tone, change the frequency, even the actual frequency in which music is recorded and played back to people, there is science behind all of these things. And I've spent a little time with Adam and you guys with this retreat, and there's a lot of talk about this, about the actual science of manipulation, how 100%. The industries do this. So just giving people, once again, just the ability to ask that question of like, oh, is this in my music? And then maybe the music, like you think about a song that you love and you think about how many times that you personally repeat that song in your daily grind. So powerful. Mantras, which they teach in Buddhism and all of these ancient arts, this is how they etched in these thoughts and these processes into their personas. So when a good song comes on that's trendy, that's negative, and we tend to repeat it, that gets driven in there. So
it's imprinting in your DNA.
Yeah. So any way that we can kind of like become aware of these things and then start making steps in a different direction, I think is like really, really good.
100%.
And to hit on that, for people that are listening that find themselves questioning some of this stuff, like who am I? Like what's the music I'm listening to? What's a good first sort of step? I mean, we're talking about kind of like being in Nosara is you can go to your cacao ceremonies, your plant medicine. You have access to all this stuff, but people don't normally have that access to
Yeah.
things like in the real world.
I mean, I think it all comes down to just developing self-awareness on every level, right?
Yeah.
And just, like I said, sitting with yourself, and that's why meditation is so powerful, right? It's a relationship to reality where if you can sit with yourself and just be witness to everything that's coming up, rather than just being reactive and just being unconscious and going through the motions, then you have an opportunity to change it. And so when you develop that self-awareness, you can apply it to every part of your life. It's like, how am I showing up in my relationship? How am I showing up at work? What kind of food am I putting in my body? What kind of drink? What kind of music am I listening to? What kind of news? All of it is information that you're inputting into your body. Right? So being really conscious about, is this serving me? Or am I just going through the motions? Like, I go back to Toronto and my family has, CNN on in the background all the time. And it's just
it's nonsense.
Negative fear mongering. They don't even hear it anymore.
If only it was cool stuff, it'd be really
exactly,
amazing.
right? And so, but when you cultivate that sense of self-awareness and you sort of take a look at your life, it's like, wait a minute, there's a lot of things here that are not serving me. Like this music that I'm listening to, the lyrics that I'm repeating is like, is this who I want to be? Is this who I am? Or is it just, am I doing it unconsciously, right? So developing that self-awareness and applying it to all aspects of your life will you'll immediately be like, okay, here are 3 to 5 changes I can make right now that are going to improve my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just start there. That's a great place to start.
Yeah, that's a very like stoic way of approaching things, is like looking at the big picture, but only taking just a small step at a time until you get used to taking those steps.
Totally.
And then,
Well, it can become overwhelming very quickly, right? It's like, oh my God, I have to chant. Like people feel like they have to burn their whole life down, right?
Sure.
It's like, okay, let's not take rash action here, but let's take some action, right? Because you can get immobilized by the overwhelm very quickly. So what you just said is huge.
100%.
Take one step, right? Take a night off drinking.
Yeah.
Right?
See what happens.
Get up in the morning and go to yoga. See what happens. You might feel differently, you know?
Yeah, it for me personally, when I choose to disrupt a pattern, it's not even just disrupting the pattern. It's such an unusual thing that happens in my mind. Is I just start thinking about different things that I wouldn't normally think about, and I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
Why am I thinking about that? Or like I'm now walking slower, taking a walk instead of driving my quad to somewhere, and it's just a little bit slower.
Shit.
And what you said also about it not becoming overwhelming, I think this is where a coach is really, really handy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people, they can have that awareness, but then they're like, oh dear, especially if they're like OCD or something like that, and they can't compartmentalize things, they can just see a big picture and just be like, that is too much. I'm just going to go back to the way I was.
Yes, totally. Because it's terrifying also, it's scary.
Yeah.
So like we said earlier, it's that if you're tied into that as an identity, like Party Patty, I'm this guy that goes to work and drinks and listens to whatever, and that becomes your identity, that this is who I am, and you're like, you don't even realize there's another option. You just think this is it, right? Yeah. And so when you have this awareness, like, wait, I can be something else, but that seems scary because I don't know what it is, and it means I have to let go of all these things that I know are familiar, right? Yeah. This is familiar. I might not like being hungover, but at least I know what I'm gonna get. It's like when I go out. So, I mean, this is why I applaud anybody who takes a leap into personal development. It takes courage and it takes discipline, but the rewards are massive, huge. But it can be overwhelming at the beginning. So I agree. Getting a coach or at least somebody to hold you accountable. Applying your self-awareness and to what your day-to-day life looks like. What are your practices? How do you start your morning, for example? Are you picking up your phone straight away? Because then you're going right back into the pattern. Yeah. You just said pattern interrupt. That's just huge. And first thing in the morning is the best time to do it, right? So when you wake up, how are you setting yourself up for the day? Is it going to your phone? Is it just randomly, unconsciously doing the things you normally do? Or are you going to intentionally, I'm going to journal for 5 minutes and just list some things I'm grateful for?
Sure. Yeah.
Hugely powerful. Or meditate or exercise or whatever it might be, that this is a positive step I can take first thing in the morning that sets a trajectory for the rest of my day.
Sure.
Right?
Or week even.
Or week,
Huberman's a good one to listen to. If you have any of the questions around here, just search for Huberman Lab, and he generally has like an episode on like anything that
Yeah.
we just talked about.
And
So
it's all neuroscience based.
it's all neuroscience,
Yeah.
and he'll give so many referrals, and you might have to. It's a little bit hard to digest sometimes, but
Yeah.
he's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that stuff, all the tools and everything are really great. Becoming aware,
Yeah.
having accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think having someone, either maybe a partner, if you trust your partner, and if you want to have that relationship with your partner to keep you accountable in that space,
Yeah.
I think it can be nice.
Yeah.
Well, so
I mean, there is one thing I want to say
go
here.
ahead. Yeah, please.
And because I went so deep into the personal development world, like the spiritual world, I traveled the world, went to retreats and everything, plant medicine, I've done it all, right? Which was awesome. Loved it.
Sure.
But what we're trying to move away from when we do personal development is that ego identity. It's the unconsciousness. It's like the self-serving, thoughts. There's still so much of that prevalent in the spiritual community that I had to take a step back. I'm like,
oh, for sure.
There's
Definitely.
so much bullshit here still, and that it's not a judgment. It's a observation.
Yeah.
Right? That you can get addicted the same way you were to alcohol or anything else you were addicted to before. You can get addicted to cacao ceremony or yoga or plant medicine,
Well said. Yeah.
because it's just another way to validate some identity, some ego thing that you think you are supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to be that anymore, but now I'm going to be this big spiritual person. And how do I signal to everybody else that I'm spiritual? Oh, I wear a white robe and a hat and a feather, and I go to yoga and cacao ceremonies and I dance to the right music. I'm like, great, awesome doing all those things, but are you really being that thing? Are you really being that? Or why do you have to wear the white robe and the feather and the hat?
Sure.
I mean, go for it if you want to, of course. But it's really easy to get sucked back into ego identity, even within the spiritual wellness community, right?
Any of those. I grew up in a Kundalini family.
Okay.
And we used to call these people Kundalinis. They were literally like heroin addicts or some sort of like other drug addict that would port over to Kundalini.
Yeah.
And they'd just be in there all day doing their breath work, all day long, meditating. And it's like, well, okay, that's fine. I guess you're not doing heroin. But
I mean, it's a better thing to be addicted to, 100%.
But you're
it's
still
an
disconnected,
addiction.
yeah,
And there's a part of you that's looking to escape.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what I said at the beginning. All of these practices are for a relationship to reality and yourself.
And
right?
yourself.
That's all they are. And so use them as such, but if you find yourself using them too much, like you might want to check in with yourself. Like, what am I trying to escape by doing plant medicine for the 10th time this year? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Have I found it
Yeah,
yet?
it's like you're going back to the well, which means you're not getting the whole point of it, right? Which is just a perspective shift,
Oh, cool. Yeah. All those things, so valuable, and they're like, I hope people hear this, and then that kind of like sparks that in their mind, and they go out and they try and just seek something, some sort of awareness, just to disconnect the pattern breaking.
I mean, just becoming self-awareness and becoming the witness of your own mind. Those are the most two powerful. How you get there, there's a million ways to get there,
Sure. Yeah.
But those are the two most powerful things that will change your life.
Amazing.
Because if you are just operating unconsciously, then it's your subconscious old patterns are just going to run your life, and you're 95%.
The shadow's still there.
The shadow's still there, and it's still operating.
Anywhere.
Yes. But if you can become the witness of and this was a huge moment for me. I hated meditating. It's just because like, this is boring. I don't know. I'm not getting anything out of it. I feel like I'm wasting time, especially for productive people that are taught that productivity equals value in the West, which all of us are. It's like, unless you're creating value in the world, you're meaningless.
You're useless.
That mentality gets you caught up in this idea that if I'm not doing something, I'm failing, right? And so if I'm sitting there doing nothing, listening to my breath, I'm losing by default, right? Because some other guy's hustling right now,
It's
but
tough.
the opposite is true. And this took me a long time to figure out. It's like, by sitting there being silent and being the witness of my mind, and from what I mean by that is like, I'm not just a thought comes up and I react, or an emotion comes up and I react. That's, on top of each other from stimulus to response. If I can witness the emotion or the trigger or the thought come up, not doing anything about it, just watch it. Just become the witness of it. It's like, oh, there's anxiety. Oh, there's anger. There's what I'm going to have for lunch. you know, whatever it is, and just not react to it, then you're training yourself to be more aware. You have more agency, you have more power over everything. You're not just a product of your reactivity to your old programming, right? Yeah. And in that moment, you are changing literally your biochemistry. Yeah. Because here's a trigger, here's where the response used to be, the neurons are married together. If you can open that gap and say, wait, I'm not going to respond the same way, then your neuron's going to be firing in a different way. You could choose to fire it this way. And the more you do that, that becomes your new normal, right? And so now anxiety comes up. Okay, now I don't reach for the alcohol straight away. I'm like, oh, let's watch this. Where did that come from? Why am I feeling this way? It's really uncomfortable and I want to escape, but I'm just going to watch it and see what happens, right? It's like, oh, it's because of somebody said, or I hadn't paid that bill, or whatever it might be. You can, you know, or my relationship with my mother, or whatever it is, you know?
Whatever it is, yeah.
And in that moment, you gain so much more power and agency over yourself and your relationship to reality, right? Yep. It's like, okay, I can be present with everything that comes up, not just the good stuff. And just that whole spectrum gives me a feeling of completeness and wholeness. That is the whole point of personal development and wellness in the first place. Connected to self and connected to oneness, right?
Totally, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it does take people a while to get there, and even telling people this, it just doesn't really land until you actually physically feel that inside of you, that change.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I used to do that, and now for some reason I just don't.
Yeah.
And if anyone's ever trained for a marathon or built muscle or anything like that, it's pretty much exactly the same.
Training yourself.
So you just have to train it.
And that's why you call it practice, right?
Exactly.
But it's exactly like a practice in a game. When I'm sitting on the mat, or I'm doing yoga, or I'm meditating, that's the practice. The real game is out here when I'm in traffic and I get cut off and I'm triggered and I want to yell at this guy. It's like, okay, just watch all that anger instead of just yelling or trying to go cut him off, you know?
So reactivity.
The real game is why we practice is for the real world, you know? You're not going to find spirituality on the mat. It's a great place to practice, but it's, you know, it's easy to become in oneness when you've got, you know.
And something to hit on that as we are moving into an increasingly more digital age where even myself, I find myself going out less and interacting with people. You have to actually go out and practice these things. Yeah. So you can sit there and say, you can, you know, address all these things, but like go out there, I'm not saying make someone mad, but put yourself in a place where you're going to have to deal with these things, and then exercise the same way. Step back. Okay, all right, cool. This person does not make me feel good, but I'm gonna be here anyways, and I'm gonna endure this because this is life.
Best way to do it is your family, dude. If anybody's gonna trigger you, it's your family. You go home for Thanksgiving and you'll find out how spiritual you are. Real quick.
Exactly. That's the weekend retreat. It's time to go home with your family.
Exactly.
You thought you were gonna go to Costa Rica.
Dude, your family will be the #1 trigger. Because they know you, you know, they know you. And they're going to push every button because they know what your buttons are.
And if you have childhood friends, those are the ones who get me too, because they just call me out on everything. If I try and pull some bullshit out, they're just like, what are you talking about?
Dude, what's with the Malabeats?
What's going on? So tell us what you got going on. Tell us like what's the next big thing.
Well, I mean, like I said, I went back to music just because it was calling in my soul, and Adam McInnes has been such a great mentor and leader in that respect. You know, everything he's doing with music has been really inspiring. And so I've been writing songs, which is always what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do score or jingles and everything, but it paid the bills, so super grateful for that. But what I really wanted to do was be a songwriter and a producer. I'm a big fan of Rick Rubin. Rick Rubin's like my idol. I want to be that guy, like the big beard, the zen, creating amazing music. That's what I want to do. You know, that's what I am doing.
What's up? Like, this is something I didn't know about Rick Rubin. He doesn't know how to play a single instrument.
No, he doesn't have any musical talent at all. He's a tastemaker and a space holder. That's what he does, right? And that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, I have developed a lot of talent.
Of course,
and
I'm not
skill.
discounting that as well.
No, but I mean, I'm a different sort of producer than Rick is. You know, Rick is the old school producer where he just, you know, holds space for the band to get the best out of them. I'm actually, you know, touching the, you know, playing the instruments and programming the drums and all that stuff. Anyway, writing songs. The best songs in my life, the best music in my life right now. It's incredible. These artists that I'm working with, young artists who are super tuned in. And so we're creating catalogs of music that we can then pitch to film and TV and places where we can generate income, and that income goes back into our own development, personal development, and network. And so we're not giving away all the money to record labels and everything. You know, we have control over them. We own the music, we own the master, we own the publishing, and that is just so empowering. Right?
For sure.
And so we can spread that music. They're all artists who want to have artist projects as well. So it's not just about writing for sync opportunities. They want to have their own artist careers as well. And they are. They're all, coming up, which is awesome. And that how we can put those frequencies and those songs out into the world and have people resonate with them and lift them up and inspire them to go do their own personal work. Like that's kind of what lights me up right now, right? And so I want to attract more young artists who are looking to make money with their music, because it's really difficult now to make money because you're not selling albums,
sure,
right?
yeah.
And so, but sync is a way where you can make money and then use that money to fund your artist career and go out and travel and tour and do all those things, So, and why it's so exciting for me is because I do get to hold space for these younger artists, who might be going through something or might be trying to get into personal development or are caught in a toxic relationship or whatever it might be with alcohol or a person. And sort of guide them through that while we're writing great songs, and so have this sort of space holding and taste making, kind of like what Rick does, It's like hold space for the artist to get really vulnerable and honest with themselves, which is where the best songs come from anyway, right? And if you can be that honest with yourself and express that into the world in a way that is meaningful or resonates with somebody else, then it gives them permission to feel that anxiety or that, right? And so it snowballs into more transformation at scale, which is what I've always been about. How can I be most impactful in my life? How can my life be of most service to all life?
Sure, yeah.
Right?
And to like bring full circle to something that you were talking about, how you're saying like a good producer of amazing music and artists is a space holder.
Yeah.
And I think what in the past, we'll say like drugs and alcohol and all these things has given artists is that forced vulnerability.
Yes, exactly.
And the fear of life itself is to be naked in front of people, expressing and being heard. But how true is it going to be if you're distorted?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
To say it to speak it from a sober perspective, which all artists would, not all artists, a lot of artists would love to be under the influence of something, feeling like this will fuel their creative drive. But I do feel like there's a different way. It's just we're all very afraid to be
100%.
that vulnerable.
Yeah, and another way to look at that, if you look at the 27 Club, all those artists that died at 27, Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, all of them, what their talent was to be able to go to those deep, dark places of the soul.
Totally.
Right? And to be vulnerable and to bring that out and express it in a way, like I was saying, that makes other people say, oh, I'm not alone, right?
Yeah.
But the challenge was it not getting stuck there.
Right.
And when you get stuck there, it's like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with all, and so heroin, alcohol, that's what the drugs, yes, they can fuel the creativity, but for me, it was more about soothing the pain of going to those darkest places. Right? And so that's why we put these artists up on a pedestal. It's like, wow, they went deep for all of us, right? And they came back with the gold and they martyred themselves for our benefit. That's why they're like, oh, holy God. But you're right. If you can hold space for somebody to go to those darkest places and then give them the support and the tools to get back to wholeness, back to centeredness, and not stay in the darkness, then you have an artist that will be healthy over an entire career, entire lifetime.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And exactly what you said, dude. It's like the whole spectrum of life is available then, right? You can have the highest highs, but you can go to the darkest places and still come back to center.
Sure.
Right? And that's, again, what practice is. It's the relationship with reality, not discounting any part of the spectrum of life. Right. It's all part of it, not just the highs and not just the lows. Right?
It's probably what the Beatles more or less found out when they went to India. A lot of the practices that we're talking about originate from that part of the world. Yeah. So it's pretty cool,
Very cool.
And the journey of an artist has got to be a pretty frightening one, because you yourself are the vessel of your emotions.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Just
so many ways you can get in your own way. So that's kind of what I do, is hold space for artists to get out of their own way, find that vulnerable gold and express it in a way that people resonate with. Right?
Yeah, which I
think that they can make money with, because it places in a movie. Yeah. And then they get all these Shazams from people like, wow, I love that song in that movie. Who is that artist? And all of a sudden they've got 1 million Shazams, and then now they have a career. Yeah, right? That's kind of the process I got them through.
Money's good. We all need money to live.
We all need money.
Wonderful.
Well, money is an important thing to talk about, because I grew up. My parents were successful, middle class successful, but I had this idea that anybody who's rich has taken advantage of somebody or oppressed somebody or screwed somebody over. A lot of cases that's true, but it's not the whole story, right? And so when I was getting into personal development, and like, I really want to make a big impact, but I don't want to play the game of the rich corporate capitalism thing. But so again, if I'm going to go sit in a kibbutz in the middle of nowhere and not do anything and not make any money, my impact is, or my ability to impact is very low. But if I'm in the game and I'm making money, that amplifies who I am and what my mission and my purpose is, right? And so if I can come into alignment and feel good about who I am and what my mission is in the world, money's only going to amplify that. So bring on the abundance. You know, I am happy to play the game. Give me all the money because I'm just going to make the world better with it.
Totally.
You know what I mean? And lift other people up.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm one of those people, a young man who's wanting, you know, musically talented but had no direction, how do I contact you and what does that look like? You know?
I mean, just Instagram's the easiest way. Portalize is my producer name.
Okay.
At Portalize Official is the Instagram. Just hit me up there and we'll connect. Or just search Patrick Cooke online and you'll find me somewhere.
Right on. I think we could sit here and talk about like a million different things, but I like for people to just have a little bit of the mystery and then hopefully they actually like look you up and follow down that bread.
Reach out, man. Let's make some great music.
Exactly.
Right on.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me, man.
Cheers, all right. Crazy.